Okie dokie, yo. Hey you and welcome, folks. My name is Mike, and sorry if that's making noise. It's me just moving the frickin' thing.
The pop shield.
Is that what it's called? You know, after running the world's greatest podcast for the last, I don't know how many years we've even been doing this, I would know the words of the things I use, but I don't. But I do know that you are listening to the That Chapter podcast. Sitting across from me is my junior associate and secretary, not the word you're going to say, just secretary, Dirty Keith.
Hey, what's up?
And folks, welcome to another episode of the That Chapter podcast. Today we've got a great story for you.
I'm very excited for this.
Very excited. It's a really, really fun one. But you know what? First off, let's do some housekeeping.
Okay.
I feel like we need to. The folks at home, I know you've been crying out for it. Keith.
Yes.
And you know, we're balls deep in fall, in autumn right now.
Yep.
What's been going on with your ghostly tales of whatever's been going on in your house and whatnot? Have you got any good stories for us?
I do have a story.
You do?
Yeah,
Okay,
it's weird. So we got a new painting in the house.
Okay.
And
what's it of?
So I'll tell you after.
Oh, what the fuck?
No. So basically, I'll tell you.
You're
what
leaving
happened
the listeners on edge.
I'll tell you what happened first because what the painting is of is weird. So we had to paint it up, I hung it up, and all was fine. So we left the house then, it was up for like a couple of weeks, and then we left the house for the day, we came back a couple of hours later, and we opened the front door, and this painting was just smashed down on the ground, like face down, glass everywhere, it was in bits. The hook was still up on the wall, so the painting it was on the ground, which is weird, don't know how it got there. But the painting, so we got this painting from my wife's parents.
Yeah.
It had been up in their attic for 30 odd years.
Ooh,
so
you got some Dorian Gray shit going on here.
So they got the painting when they were traveling around. They went to the States and they bought it off a Native American, and it was from like a Native American tribe they got it from.
Okay.
So that's where they got the painting from.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah. So it's a cool painting, really, really cool. But apparently,
You think you've angered
doesn't sit right in my house.
Spirits?
Yeah, it could do. That's what I was thinking. It's like maybe the spirit of the painting doesn't agree with the spirit of my house.
Damn.
It's trying to get out.
Shit.
Yeah, jumping off hooks,
What
smashed
is
on the ground.
painting of?
It's of a Native American, but it's done really cool. It's like, I think the medium they use, they did it with like imprints of like a snowy leaf.
Okay, cool.
Which is cool. So it's all like this, like it's an imprint of a snowy leaf, and then there's like a Native American drawn over it. I guess it's cool. It's really cool. I'll show you a picture after.
But he's not happy.
I guess it's currently in a black bag under the stairs.
That's happy now.
Yeah, but that's more so with the glass.
Yeah.
But
wow.
Yeah. So I'll try to get up again, and I'll see if
What? How did it fall? Did the wire you have on the back that you hang onto the hook?
that was still there. So it
Wait,
was.
what?
We had
So you don't know how it fell off the wall. Like the hook is still placed on the wall.
It was
the wire is still placed
yeah.
in the back of the painting.
Like it was a normal hook. I guess it might have been a bit small, but it was still a hook. Like something would need to knock it off.
To like probably lift up the wire on the back of the painting.
Yeah, for it to fall out. Yeah, so we obviously weren't in the house. There was no windows open, so there was no breeze. No one's walking by it and brushing off and knocked it off.
Man.
I think if someone's running around the house and it came off, like that makes sense.
Yeah.
Someone knocked it off the hook. But yeah, weird.
Maybe you've got the ghost really is not a fan of your
Doesn't
artistic choices,
yeah,
I guess.
Doesn't like my taste in art.
Or just really doesn't like Native Americans. Who knows? Maybe you're haunted by General Custer. Who knows?
God, racist in the house.
Well, also, speaking of housekeeping,
yeah.
so your ghost is acting up again, as they always does. He, she, they always do. Come autumn.
This is a busy time of year.
They're only mad for it.
Yeah.
I watched a good horror movie lately for Malibu Mike's movie reviews. Oh, by the way, I get emails all the time of people recommending new movies, and I always
What a
forget.
flex.
Yeah, well,
I get emails constantly.
I know. Well, no, it's actually I feel bad because I feel like I should be giving these people shout outs because I get really good recommendations. But when we get to record, I always completely forget to be like, hey, this person, you sent me emails. That was really cool. You know who you are. Basically, I'm scanning through my emails and I can't find it. But anyway, you know who you are. So the movie I watched this week in Malibu Mike's horror movie reviews was a movie called Found Footage.
Okay, your
Recent
favorite.
movie. All you guys know, found footage is my favorite genre. So the movie Found Footage, it came out this year, 2025, and it's great. It was like a horror slash comedy, low budget, but I thought the actors were all great. I thought everything about it was great. So the premise of the movie is it's like one of those, documentary within a found footage. Basically, if you guys have ever seen What We Do in the Shadows, the movie is great. TV show is like pretty good, but the movie is
I love the
phenomenally
TV show.
good. No, TV show is good, but the movie is like
The movie's great.
great.
I love Matt Berry.
Oh yeah, he's great.
Yeah,
Everything.
yeah.
Yeah, I do. I love him. He is great, but the movie is like one of those movies I can
Yeah.
watch again and again. It's very similar to that in like the tone and the flavor of the movie. I
nice.
thought
Yeah.
if you like What We Do in the Shadows, which is like a horror comedy, you would like this.
Excellent.
So it's the premise of found footage is it's this like French film crew who are following these indie filmmakers who are going to make a found footage horror movie about Bigfoot.
Okay, right.
It's called the Patterson Project. That's the movie they're going to make.
Yeah.
So it's it's kind of like a documentary following a film group. Kind of,
Got it.
or
Okay.
Fan footage kind of thing. So they go out into the woods in like California or whatever. They're getting ready to film this little indie movie, and of course the house that they're staying at is haunted by a demon perchance.
Ooh.
And shit goes down from there. But I thought it was great. I would give it like
what do you want this week?
I don't know what I would do. Like 3 toes up. I don't know. I would definitely give it like a 3 or 4 out of 5.
Okay.
I thought it was really enjoyable. Very surprised.
Yeah.
It felt very fresh.
Yeah.
Found footage, folks. If you can find it, I watched it on Apple. I think I just rented it on Apple Movies, but if you can find it wherever you found it, I'd highly recommend it. Yeah,
Check
it's
it
good. I like it. It's always cool to see like new, fresh faces in these kind of movies.
Trying something different as well.
Trying something different. You can tell it's very like influenced by. It felt like very influenced by things like What We Do in the Shadows.
Yeah.
But it still felt very good, and I thought everybody who worked on it was very talented. So go check it out. I would highly recommend it.
I will definitely check it out. Get me in the spooky mood for the spooky season.
Yeah, other than that, I watched some golden oldies. I watched House on Haunted Hill, the original 1950s something version with Vincent Price.
Is that like do you know that new movie that was out on Netflix, The Haunting of Hill House?
No. It's different. Completely different.
Right,
This is like an old movie. Not very good, but enjoyable.
Okay.
Vincent Price is great.
Yeah.
I also watched the original, because remember I watched the original Halloween and the original Friday the 13th.
Oh, here, okay.
Yeah,
You
so
got a lot of shtick off your opinions on that.
Did I?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. But also not sorry. So I watched the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre, which I thought was pretty good.
Yeah.
It's extremely gory.
It is, yeah.
Like I was like, geez, this movie came out in like the 70s. Like,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah.
But it was fun. It's totally plotless, but fun. And then I tried to watch the original Nightmare on Elm Street.
Oh, yeah.
Freddy Krueger.
Yeah.
What a heap of shit that movie is. Really
Controversial.
bad. Wow. No, it's bad. Go back and watch it without your rose-tinted nostalgia goggles. It is a heap of shit. But you know what I did watch?
What?
I turned it off and I put on a much better movie.
Yeah.
The Thing.
The
starring
Thing,
Kurt
yeah.
Russell, which is one of my all-time favorite movies of all time.
That's
It
great.
is so goddamn good.
That's a great one, yeah.
It's a movie I could watch again and again.
Yeah.
Who's the Thing? It's a movie where I feel like every time you watch it, you pick up new things about how the characters are acting and shit like that.
Yeah.
So, folks, save yourself and just watch The Thing. Honestly, it holds up extremely well.
Yeah, it's a solid film. And it ties into what we're talking about today a little bit.
It does, folks, because today we are talking about aliens. Ooh. Yeah, today, folks, we're talking about what happened in a forest in England. The Rendlesham Forest Incident. It is a wild story. We're actually going to be interplaying some some actual recordings from the incident itself, if you can believe such a thing.
Yeah, so you know it's real.
Absolutely. This happened in, was it 1980? Very spooky, very interesting, and full of the twists and turns, folks. I'm excited to get into today's whole episode, so let's get into it.
Yeah.
Alrighty, so let's set the scene. Rendlesham Forest is a 3,700-acre area of mixed woodland in the county of Suffolk, which is sandwiched between Norfolk in the north and Essex to the south. This is, to a lot of people, the counties of England may mean nothing. So basically, this is like the southeast of England.
Yep.
That sort of area. Up until 1943, the forest was actually far more substantial in acreage, but unfortunately for the local wildlife, laying on England's eastern coastline with the North Sea, it was the perfect place for the military to park their very busy planes as they returned for repairs after various sorties. Namely, there was kind of a big one about less than 100 years ago, so they kind of needed the land. With the Second World War going full bollocks, the existential threat to the country as a whole was deemed far more of a priority than protecting ground nesting birds and other various flora and fauna that called the forest home. And so a huge swathe of woodland was cut and cleared to make way for RAF Woodbridge. These days, or as of its reopening on September 1st, 2006, the base today, the military air base, is known as MOD Woodbridge. That's Ministry of Defense Woodbridge. Now, just to be clear, there is also another nearby airbase, RAF Bentwaters, was less than 9 miles from Woodbridge, and so the presence and proximity of bases Woodbridge and Bentwaters led to the pair being known as twin bases until the dual closure of Woodbridge and Bentwaters in 1993 and the departure of the last A-10 Warthog. And of course, Woodbridge was reopened though September 1st, 2006. Folks, that's just a bit of a background. We're not here for Air Force bases, we're here for the frickin' aliens. But the point being, this is an area where you got a lot of woodland, a lot of forests, and you got 2 air bases. Or back in the day, when this story is set, there was 2 large and active Air Force bases. So if you were to poll the residents of the wider area around Rendlesham Forest and Suffolk in general, you'd be hard-pressed to find anyone who didn't have some sort of experience with weird lights in the sky. Sort of, Keith, we live sort of near an airport.
We do, yeah.
You know, and you've experienced it yourself, seeing weird lights in the sky. You have first-hand knowledge, Keith.
I seen it. It was a very bright light, and then it just disappeared.
Wow.
Spooky.
What a great story.
It was a good story. You weren't there.
But basically the point we're saying is, it's a large forest, 2 Air Force bases. Everybody who lives in the area has seen strange lights in the sky, which is what makes this story so strange and notable enough that people refer to the Rendlesham Forest incident as the English Roswell. Because it would have to be very bizarre and have a serious amount of evidence to be noteworthy.
That's true. Yeah. And the area, it wasn't exactly new to odd goings on, even by military standards. So on the 13th of August 1956, in what became the Bentwaters Lakenheath incident, radar operators at the RAF Bentwaters, they tracked several targets which were moving far too fast. So they scrambled the fighter jets to go and check it out. The fighters, they saw nothing. But later, when another object was detected moving very, very quickly again, various witnesses reported seeing a white light fly quickly overhead at the same time. So one pilot, he later reported being chased by something he couldn't identify. The chase was investigated and quickly climbed the chain. Skeptics, they point to the Perseid meteor shower and jumpy radar. However, believers say that that just doesn't quite cover it. Officially, there's still no agreed explanation, so no one knows.
So weird shit going on in the area before we even get into today's topic.
It's true. For some reason, UFOs love airports. They love it, especially military airports.
They think they're buddies.
Right, yeah.
It's like, oh, hey, you're like this.
Yeah.
You know? As Keith described, the Lakenheath incident also appeared in the US Air Force's Project Blue Book. Now, codenamed Project Blue Book, a lot of you folks I'm sure will be very familiar with it, but just quick run through. It's the official but very much classified and hush-hush investigation into interactions between the US military and UFOs. And the investigation began in the March of 1952, running all the way through December 1969 when Project Blue Book was terminated. Basically, the US Air Force was like, there's so many reports of these UFOs, let's do a proper investigation, hence Blue Book. The project was based out of Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where it was initially run by Captain Edward J. Ruppelt. The project's aim was to assess whether or not UFOs posed any real threat to national security by analyzing all of the data the military had on unidentified aerial phenomena at the time. It was by no means the first time the military had launched that type of investigation, having already developed projects Sign and Grudge in 1946 and 1949, respectively. Now, during its lifetime of Operation Blue Book, investigators working, they examined more than 12,500 separate documented incidents of UFOs. Of all 12,618, only 701 remained either classified or unexplained by the end of the project's lifetime. So that's less than 12%. Still a hefty percent.
It's a hell of that's a lot of cases.
Yeah.
I guess it's all about context when it comes to percentages as well. I'll forgive a hot dog that's only 10% meat. I'm still going to eat it. But not being able to explain 10% of UFO encounters, that's a lot.
It is. It truly is. I mean, the remainder, the 11,000 and whatever, were largely explained by misidentification of known natural atmospheric or meteorological phenomenon, or simply they were just planes misidentified. Others were deemed to be explained by formerly classified flights of US reconnaissance craft like the U-2 or the A-12. Like, essentially, Project Blue Book was like the real life X-Files, but still, there was like a good 5% of things they couldn't explain. By the way, speaking of U2, I was at an air show recently, not the band. I see you smile. The plane.
Yes, we're going to talk about Bono.
Finally. No, I was at an air show in the UK, actually, for my dad's birthday.
Yeah.
And I seen a U2 fly in real life. It's the spy plane they used in the 50s.
Yeah.
It's really creepy as all hell. It
Really?
sounds so strange, and it's so quiet. Yeah, really, really interesting plane.
Like, it doesn't make any noise?
When it's high, it doesn't make any noise. Like when other planes will be like, this is like completely silent. But when it's taken off, it took off like right in front of us. It sounds really like eerie and like creepy sounding. I can guarantee, like, if you didn't know what that was, you'd be like, that sounds like an alien. It sounds like it's very strange. Wish I had a recording of it. So, anyways, today, folks, our visit to the twin bases and Rendlesham forests, it takes us to Boxing Day, 1980. Boxing Day, what they would call in the UK, of course. Here in Ireland, we call it St. Stephen's Day.
St. Stephen he's the patron saint of headaches.
Really?
Yeah, which is it's quite fitting because you're probably going to have a couple on Christmas Day. So the next day you're going to have a bit of a head in you.
Yeah, that's exact. Yeah, I never knew that. Yeah, Boxing Day or St. Stephen's Day is December 26th to everybody else. And the day of headaches.
And the day of headaches.
Put it. Yeah. At around 3 a.m. that morning, a security team from RAF Woodbridge, consisting of U.S. Airman First Class John Burroughs and Staff Sergeant Bud Steffens, they were performing their regular patrol duties, when suddenly, something in the sky caught their attention. Now again, lights in the area were very much the norm for those used to it, so the fact that these lights so easily caught the attention of experienced airmen, it says a lot. The lights appeared to have been descending into the forest not far away from the men's location at the airbase. On-duty Flight Chief Sergeant Jim Peniston and Airman Edward Cabansag, they attended the concerned call from Burroughs and Steffens, and their reaction was almost automatic, rushing immediately towards where they estimated the source of the lights would have ended up, deep in the woods. In those minutes before reaching their destination, all 4 men had a little time to think about what they could be heading into. But naturally, their minds raced from the worst scenario, invading Ruskies, all the way to maybe the most mundane, but still likely terrifying, a downed aircraft.
As they were closing in on whatever had caused the streaking lights, the men, they noticed something alarming. So the animals from a nearby farm, they were just going crazy. They were going berserk. There was loud moos and snorts. But one thing, it sounded like human screams that they could hear, which gave a very nervy situation and even more uncomfortable soundtrack. So the screams, they were described as like a woman screaming. And the terror and fear began to creep in. The Burroughs' official statement was, you could hear the farm animals making lots of noises, which as far as statements go, it says.
Yes, all right, fair enough. You could hear like a woman screaming. It's like, they're just being noisy. Okay. So Cabansag and Steffens, they remained on the main road, while Peniston and Burroughs followed a trail usually frequented by hikers and loggers, and they soon came to an opening in the woods. But almost as soon as they entered the clearing, they were rendered blind by a bright flash of light. Once the light had subsided and the men's vision slowly returned, they realized what they were looking at and what had seemed to cause the blinding light. A triangular-shaped object that seemed to be some kind of craft. Then, even more worryingly, the animals all around suddenly fell silent. The disturbing screams stopped, and the men stood facing the object in silence. What happened next strongly varies depending on which of the men's accounts it is you read, yet technically, both could be true. According to Sergeant Jim Peniston's account of the night, there was palpable static electricity in the air, enough to have made the hair on the men's arms raise up, had it not already done so from the fear of what they were seeing. Peniston closed in on the craft, close enough to reach out and touch the mysterious object. The majority of the craft was made of something resembling, quote, smooth, opaque black glass. But when he saw that it had strange lettering on it, he ran his fingers over them and felt they were coarse, almost like sandpaper. Quote, I estimated it to be about 3 meters tall and about 3 meters wide at the base. No landing gear was apparent, but it seemed like she was on fixed legs. I moved a little closer. I walked around the craft, and finally, I walked right up to the craft. I noticed the fabric on the shell was more of a smooth, opaque black glass.
He said that the letters on the craft, they were far from English. So they reminded him of Egyptian hieroglyphics. And Peniston, he took out his notebook and he began sketching out the letters as best he could. I really like to think of the alien hieroglyphics, like instead of like some deep message from like an outer galaxy, or just like a warning label, you know, like stand clear when machine is operating. Safety first, you know.
Back in the field, though, the moment Peniston broke physical contact with the craft, he was once again blinded by a strong, bright light. When his vision settled, he watched as the craft rose up into the air and disappeared from view. He rejoined Burroughs, and the two saw that the object had left tree marks, like indentations on the ground. The two men decided to return to the others and report what they had just seen. But when Peniston remarked to Burroughs about the several minutes the experience had taken, Burroughs was taken aback. To him, it had all only taken a few seconds. When the men reached the start of the trail, where they had left their colleagues, they were surprised that there was no one in sight. Why would they leave without them after seeing something so strange in the woods? They later came across another man who was apparently part of a search party looking for Peniston and Burroughs, who, to everyone else, had been missing for nearly an hour. For Peniston, the unusual experiences didn't end with the departure of the craft, though. While walking back to the base, suddenly his mind was consumed with a long sequence of numbers, various ones and zeros repeating over and over and over and over. As quickly as they'd taken over his every thought, the numbers were gone, and he wouldn't think about them until years later.
That missing time is such a common theme with these encounters. Like, we've covered it before in some different episodes, and it's always on the X-Files. So it's gotta be true. Now, the local police, they were called to the scene to better investigate the lights, but the officers who responded to the call around 4 a.m. would report nothing unusual. The only lights they could see were the signal light from a nearby lighthouse. It was through the police's daily record of the previous night's activities that the deputy base commander, Lieutenant Colonel Charles Halt, he became aware of what had allegedly happened that morning. So Halt, he was told by the desk sergeant of the local police station that his men had been up all night chasing UFOs in the woods running around. So it didn't take too long for word of the little green men running around the woods to make its way around the whole base. The response from the airmen's fellow service members, it was pretty predictable. As you can imagine, there was lots of alien jokes and a crack about abductions, so not too many were taking it anyway seriously. Halt, he ended up having to warn the men to, rein it in, and eventually told them that he didn't want to hear any other talk about UFOs.
However, a couple of nights on from the first incident, now December 28th, the night of the base's overdue Christmas party, the on-duty flight chief came charging into the room and took Lieutenant Colonel Halt aside in the cloakroom. Once he caught his breath, he told Halt, "It's back." Halt was like, "What's back?" To which the flight chief replied, "The UFO is back." And remember, Halt, he's like one of the top dogs here. Yeah. He's in charge, and he didn't want his men even talking about UFOs. He was like, it's some nonsense, only to be told, look outside your freaking window, buddy. It was the night of the base's Christmas party, but it wasn't like a big, huge, like, piss fest, everybody getting drunk. It was more of a kind of like a family affair, like, covered dishes, that kind of thing. It wasn't like a big, huge, like, taking your tops off event.
Ties around the head.
Yeah, that kind of thing. It wasn't like that at all. It was like, bring the wife and kids to this. So with the base commander preoccupied at an awards presentation that evening, that left Lieutenant Colonel Halt in charge, and curiosity would lead Halt, along with 3 other men, England, Ball, and Neville's, out into the woods. The men exited through the east gate of the base, under the charge of Master Sergeant J.D. Chandler, and into Rendlesham Forest, where Lieutenant Colonel Halt was surprised to find the flight chief had already called his whole crew out, along with 2 huge searchlights to check out what was going on in the woods. Everybody was like, trying to get in on...
I want to see it.
Yeah, exactly. Unfortunately, the lights were not working. The lights, like the searchlights, they were not working for unidentified reasons. The flight chief's men were using a starlight scope, basically a first-generation night vision scope, to scan the tree line and horizon for anything unusual. Like, as I said, now everybody was like, let's get the boys! Let's find out what these weird lights are.
The area of the forest, it was the same area where 2 nights ago that Peniston and Burroughs, they had their own close encounter. So Halt had his men take him out to the site so he could see it in person. This time, they took with them various instruments, including the security officer on duty, Sergeant Neville's camera and Geiger counter, which, when they waved the meter over the area of the depressions in the ground, the needle started ticking and giving a reading of a light amount of radiation.
And very important to the legend of Rendlesham Forest was that Lieutenant Colonel Halt, he had with him a micro cassette recorder, normally used for dictating notes and that kind of stuff for future use. On this occasion, he actually took it out and he used it to describe what he was seeing, which, for the first time in that chapter industry's history, we will play a few snippets of the recording made that night.
Looking directly overhead, one can see an opening in the trees plus some freshly broken pine branches on the ground underneath. Looks like someone came off about 15 to 20 feet up. You just saw a light where? Where? Right in this position here, straight ahead, in between the tree. There it is again. Weird. It's coming this way. It is definitely coming this way. This is weird. Two lights. One light to the front, one light to the left. Keep the flashlights off. There's something very, very strange. It just moved to the right. Yeah. Off to the right. This is unreal. We're turning around, heading back toward the base.
So Halt had initially gone out with the intention of putting an end to what he saw as gossip going too far. And that's why Halt was there. He was like, you guys have been making jokes about UFOs for the last couple of days. I'm going to tell you what's real. Let's go out here and find what's actually going on. But he ended up providing the evidence that would make the case so famous in the future. In addition to the tree impressions in the dirt, the servicemen also found what appeared to be possible burn marks and broken branches, leading them to believe something unnatural had taken place there very recently. Halt also realized that looking up, the otherwise thick canopy of pine trees appeared to have been completely cleared, exposing the sky above, like some kind of craft had descended through the trees and shit.
Yeah.
Mother of God! While recording, Halt and his men, they spotted a reddish-orange light in a field nearby, almost in line with a nearby farmhouse. It appeared almost like an eye shape with a black dot at its center. It appeared to be in stable flight, but with something almost dripping to the ground. And Halt, he continued to describe what he was seeing as it happened with his tape recorder. The men in the forest at the scene, they also struggled with their radio communications. Some contact was possible, but not further than a short distance, and they struggled with interference. And in his commentary, Halt remarked on hearing animals. Just like his subordinates 2 nights before, Peniston and Burroughs, animals were acting weird, making unusual levels of noise for that time of night. Halt and his men watched as the object, roughly the size of a football, moved towards them, seeming to move intelligently, dancing through the trees and then entering the forest. It then glided back out of the forest and returned to the field where the men had first spotted it. It hovered there for almost 30 seconds before disappearing in a brilliant flash of white light. Halt immediately took his men out to the field to investigate and try and find some evidence of what they had just seen, when suddenly something to the north caught their attention. 2 star-like lights were seen hovering in the sky, several miles out from Halt's location in the field by Rendlesham Forest. Then, a third light, this time out of the south, was spotted. Halt had his men radio in the sighting to Eastern Radar to find out what was responsible. Had air defense picked up what these objects were? Were they showing up on radar? They were not showing up on radar. Whatever he was looking at, nobody could explain.
Halt would claim in his memo of the incident that the brightest of the lights had been visible for about 2 to 3 hours, travelling at seriously high speeds, at times almost in sync or in coordination with each other, and had at times seemed to be projecting some kind of beam or laser to the ground as well. Now, Halt, he described one of the objects flying almost overhead and appearing as a bright white light, 1,000 or so feet above them, when it suddenly shone down a bright beam of light beside their location. The light disappeared as quickly as it appeared, and then the object retreated away, flew off.
Halt and his men returned to base, stunned and confused at what they had just witnessed.
The fuck was that?
My thoughts exactly. They remained in 2 minds about whether or not to actually report what they had seen until much later, and even then were uncertain about how much to pass on to their superiors and fellow airmen. They'd seen and heard the jokes Burroughs and Penniston had been subject to. They'd even made those very same jokes, so the last thing they wanted to be was, well, people making jokes about them. The thing was, though, something had to be said. Halt and his men had all spoken to radio control, flight command, and radio defense controllers. He'd already told the base commander, Colonel Ted Conrad, about the incident, albeit vaguely. He'd also handed over the tape of his experience to Colonel Conrad, who in turn took the tape and played it for his own superiors. But basically, the instruction that they were told was, it happened off base. Technically, it happened in the forest, not on the airbase. So their attitude was, let the British deal with it. This was on a US airbase in England. It happened outside the airbase. It's the English people's problem.
Pass the book.
Yeah, they passed the book. Ultimately, in consultation with the RAF squadron leader, Halt decided to form a delicately worded report in the form of a memo about the entire incident. And this memo is where the Rendlesham Forest incident truly made the news. The memo was only made available 3 years on from the incident in 1983 by a request under the US Freedom of Information Act. Halt's official memo on the incident, known creatively as the Halt Memo, is one of the major primary sources, often cited as hard evidence in the Rendlesham Forest incident. But like most things associated with Halt's name, the memo has some serious issues once you scratch the surface. Not least of which being the date. The date of the initial inciting incident given by Halt in the memo is December 27th, when every other source gives it as Boxing Day, St. Stephen's Day, December 26th. The memo itself was dated January 13th, 1981. The memo apparently was written 2 weeks later, and it was under the title Unexplained Lights. The amount of time that passed between the event and the memo is very likely the reason for the confusion around the dates. I mean, ultimately, the dates were like a little bit off, but not like wildly off.
Yeah.
That doesn't bother me too much. He's being a couple of days off.
You think for something so serious, though, he'd...
You want to double check?
Yeah.
Sure. The memo was also never really classified, else it would not have been made public under a simple Freedom of Information request. It is often erroneously described as declassified. It was never classified to begin with. In 1983, the release of the memo was also heavily pushed by the News of the World, which has been pushed by the News of the World. It's top quality stuff right here. Real hard journalism.
Well, speaking of journalism, so Halt, he performed his own investigation, having been surprised by the lack of any contact from the UK or US authorities.
Yeah, he was surprised that nobody gave a shit. He recorded the entire incident on his cassette recorder.
And no one cared.
And nobody cared. It's like, what?
So Halt, he claimed to have never been debriefed by his own experiences. Halt, he interviewed Penniston, Burroughs, Master Sergeant J.D. Chandler, Senior Supervisor on the Eastgate, Lieutenant Skip Burren, Bud Steffens, and more. Halt, he would later claim that the statements given to him by the men interviewed did not align with the eventual official statements each of them signed. So Penniston and Halt also both say that the official statements of their own accounts were actually given to them to sign and not written by themselves.
There's a reason nobody cared. They didn't want anybody knowing. You had the men in black.
Right, or shutting that down.
Yeah, they were like, this never happened.
Yeah. So Penniston, he would go on to publicly state that around the time he was interviewed by Halt on his own experiences, he had not only been debriefed on the events at Woodbridge and Rendlesham, but he had been interrogated by an unidentified men from an unidentified agency. Men he believes were from the CIA or some other classified and clandestine intelligence outfit. Maybe the Men in Black. Who knows?
There was a cover-up. That's why nobody wanted to read Halt's memo or really cared. And that's where, like, let the British do it. Nobody wanted anybody knowing about what happened at Rendlesham and why we have trustworthy news sources like News of the World brave enough to take on these classified documents, which are actually never classified. But yeah, it was kind of interesting, though. That,
they were trying to shut it down so quick,
Weird. So while Halt, he couldn't understand the British and Americans' apparent joint disinterest in pursuing an investigation into what had happened, given the implications for national security at the end of the day, regardless of who was in control of what they had seen, it still was like strange lights near US air bases and British air bases. You probably want to know what the frick they are.
Yeah, right.
Halt and Penniston both knew that individuals pursuing the issue without the approval of their superiors, not good for your career.
No.
Basically. Since retiring from the military, however, both men certainly found their voices and became very active in the paranormal research community. Oddly, they seem trusted and distrusted by UFO researchers in equal measure. Some seeing them as serious men who took their jobs very seriously and provided serious evidence. Others saying, disinformation agents. You were sent here by the government to seed fake news to us and get us distracted by mirages.
Yeah.
And your story is full of shit. In the 2010s, decades after the incident itself, the complicated history of the events at Rendlesham Forest took an interesting turn that nobody could have seen coming. Well, except for one person, but we'll get to that in a second. When Jim Penniston, first guy to see a UFO along with Burroughs, he was being interviewed for a TV show about the incident, and he began flicking through his infamous notebook. The same one he used to jot down the doodles of the glyphs he claims were on the craft he saw in the woods that night. When the producer of the show, looking at his notebook, spotted something sorta interesting. The long string of numbers, zeros and ones, that Jim had seen in his mind's eye after touching the craft way back in 1980. The producer saw all those numbers and he asked Jim, what's all these numbers about? And Jim said the numbers were downloaded to him after he touched the craft. He went on to explain that in the hours and days after, he was feeling out of sorts. Not ill, but just not quite right. He kept on having flashes of the numbers in his mind. The numbers became so clear to him that he decided to write them down. He grabbed some loose paper and began to empty his mind onto the page. And I say empty his mind because literally that's how Jim said he felt. He realized he was beginning to feel better. The more he wrote, the better he felt. Eventually, he had written down several pages of long chains of zeros and ones and zeros. Now, most people, a lot of you folks listening probably think that sounds familiar. Sounds like binary code.
Yeah.
But Jim, back in 1980, he had no idea what the shit that meant. He put the pages in his notebook and didn't come back to them in any significant way until decades had passed when the producer saw them and recognized what that was.
Yeah, like unlike Jim, the producer, he was a little more tech savvy and he recognized that the seemingly unconnected ones and zeros were very likely binary. Out of curiosity, the producer requested Jim to let the production company send them off for analysis, to which he agreed, and off they went.
And it didn't take long for an interpretation to come back that deeply shocked Jim. Not only Jim, but the entire world, maybe even you, listener. All that time, he'd been walking around with a message in his pocket.
Oh my god.
Not a message from aliens. The binary had a very much more terrestrial origin, albeit from our own very distant descendants, if you can believe it.
Oh, what a twist.
Yep, the message appeared to be from future humans.
The call is coming from within the house.
Oh my god, they weren't aliens. That was us.
Yeah.
Time travel. The programmer and translator who was tasked with converting the digits into something readable was also importantly not told the details of where the code had come from. So the translator wasn't bullshitting.
Yeah.
They hadn't been fed anything. They was like, translate this.
Yeah.
You don't know what it's about.
His opinion can be skewed.
Exactamundo. As far as they knew, it was just something from producers of a science program, all they needed to know. And the resulting message likely meant little to them. But to Penniston and anyone who knew its origin, which was a freaking alien UFO, but not alien UFO, it was us, it was potentially hugely significant for humanity. The translation of those zeros and ones that had been downloaded to Jim's mind. It went like so. Quote, ladies and gentlemen, exploration of origins of humanity, 8100. Continuous for planetary advancement. Fourth coordinate continuous sequence probe for E. Eyes for your eyes. Origin year 8100. Was that the future humans coming from the year 8100?
Yeah.
Coming back in time, 6,000 years.
Sends a message. Yeah.
And it's like, they're looking for the origins of humanity.
Yeah.
Ooh, hubba hubba. After that came another string of more binary, and that final series of digits didn't translate into words, but into other numbers. Numbers that at first seemed random, but on closer inspection were recognized to be longitudinal and latitudinal coordinates. Each set of coordinates was from a very different, but equally culturally significant position. You've Caraqui in Belize, the Nazca Lines in Peru, Sedona, Arizona, the Great Pyramids, Taishan Q in China, the Temple of Apollo in Naxos, Greece, and a final set of coordinates that seemed to land right off the coast of Ireland.
Oh.
Coordinates that on modern maps point to nothing but deep salty water off the coast of Mayo. But on old maps, I'm talking like hundreds of years ago, not even thousands of years, like Renaissance era. Like, there's an island off the coast of the west coast of Ireland, and it has the name High Brazil. Yeah.
So what, just move over to South America?
Basically, yeah. It's this mythological island that appears off the coast of Ireland. You can only see it once every 7 years, and it appears as this misty island, and then but you can never get to it.
Oh, it's like Tír na Nog.
Exactly. I think that's actually probably where the legends of Tír na Nog come from. This is a real thing, folks. If you look at old maps, you'll see this island there that doesn't exist in real life.
That's cool.
But yeah, that's what the legend is. It appears once every 7 years. The coordinates we're pointing to where this mythical High Brazil land comes from. And then it's pointing to all these other areas where the pyramids, Nazca Lines, Temple of Apollo in Greece. So all of these ancient areas of significance, mythological or religious significance.
Yeah.
Interesting.
That's so cool. That's interesting to send those coordinates.
So what was this message? Had Jim Penniston and Lieutenant Colonel Halt and all the other American airmen at RAF Woodridge actually come into contact with a craft from our own future, a craft on a scientific mission to investigate our own past? That was a very possible interpretation, and one many, including Jim Penniston, believes. Much like Halt, however, Penniston's allegations, they've also evolved over time. The description of an interrogation by some secretive tree-letter agency, it gained more details, including Penniston and several other men being doped up with hallucinogenic drugs, even hypnotized. Halt himself often voiced his support for Penniston, and Penniston for Halt about the strange events that happened over the years that, interestingly, seemed to get more strange as more times he told the story. Each man seemed to believe the other's claims, odd considering a fair few of their statements had contradicted the other's statements over the years. But they were like, actually, when I said that, I was wrong.
The drug claims, they definitely have some root in reality and history, with the MK Ultra experiments of the mid-20th century becoming one of the US intelligence community's biggest scandals. Interestingly, timing-wise, the MK Ultra experiments had already become public knowledge when Penniston made his own claims. A bit of a time, very, very interesting on the time.
Oh, now that you mention it, I too. I just couldn't talk about it before.
The actual drug itself, it's varied. Anything from sodium pentanol, which is truth serum, all the way to LSD.
Halt's interpretation of Penniston and the other men's interrogations was that the intelligence community wanted to get not only the full story from the witnesses, including every small detail, but also to implant false memories to make the nature of their claims sound so far-fetched and ludicrous that no one would believe them. Essentially, it was a disinformation operation to keep the true nature of the events under wraps, hence why their story was changing over the years and why more and more was always coming out. And the story, had the story come from anyone other than an experienced airman, the Rendlesham incident likely would have become only a very minor footnote among the more extreme UFO enthusiasts. Instead, the story has become one of the most commonly referenced and documented in the entirety of paranormal research in the United Kingdom. It is the English Roswell, because although their claims, Penniston and Halt, who were the more outspoken, their claims have evolved over the years, they're still like, we're people who were there that day, they do have proof, recordings of what they saw, and they were in the military. They weren't bullshit artists.
We're not just civilians on the street. And like a big part of why this case also endures is the micro cassette that Lieutenant Colonel Halt, he recorded in real time on the 28th, which has become one of the major pieces of evidence cited in relation to the incident. That is, despite it being no more than a vague eyewitness account of something. Like just because he recorded it, we're recording stuff. I say shit all the time. I mean, it's true.
When you listen to it, it's like he's not very definitive about what he sees. He's like, oh, there's a bright light. It's like, that could really be anything.
But the tape itself was eventually passed to paranormal researchers by Colonel Sam Morgan, who was Halt's superior officer. So Halt himself, he says that he had a friend perform a voice stress analysis on the tape, who returned to Halt and told him that he had extremely high levels of stress in his voice. Now, to me, the voices on the tape don't exactly make me think that he was looking at something life-changing and potentially world-ending, but I'm no expert. Speaking of which, Halt never names the expert friend, something that's a bit of a trend with Halt's claims.
He sounds like, oh, there's a bright light over there. Oh, there's high levels of radiation.
Trust me, bro. Trust me.
Wow. He's freaking out. He's having a panic attack. Like, let's look at this from a logical point of view, though.
Okay.
What could have been the cause of what they saw that night? For example, the indentations in the ground, which could have been caused by some kind of craft. Well, it was assumed that something with real tonnage would be required to disturb the hard December earth like that, right?
Yeah.
It was in the middle of winter, hard ground, and must have been a UFO craft. Only thing heavy enough.
Yeah.
Or not. The local police officers who visited the scene after the airmen explained that the only disturbance they found was holes dug by rabbits.
Oh.
Yeah,
That's
so another possible answer, not a million miles away from the rabbit theory, but still far from extraterrestrial, is roosting chickens.
Oh, it's worse.
Yeah, even worse than rabbits. That was the local gamekeeper's explanation. According to him, he'd seen it plenty of times before. The holes were nothing more than small rounded trenches clawed out by nesting chickens ready to lay their eggs. Okay, that's one thing. What about the otherworldly screaming the men had heard?
Oh, yeah, okay.
Animals, probably
Yeah.
muntjac deer.
Oh, okay.
Pretty boring. So the witnesses to the event, the airmen, they were all U.S. military, all Americans. And so they were very likely that they would be unfamiliar with the bizarre screeching noise that muntjac deer make. If you've never heard muntjac deer, it's very creepy.
Yeah.
I watched a few videos of muntjac deer.
What's with those things on their face?
I know, they're really
Yeah.
freaky, and
Yeah.
they do sound like screaming.
They look like aliens.
They do, yeah.
Like it's like something from Avatar or something. It's
For
wild
sure.
looking.
Really, really weird deer. Muntjac deer, they're originally from Asia, but a large population was brought to the UK because the British just loved stealing shit from other countries and bringing it back. So
It's their thing. Okay?
Yeah. So they're like, let's put this in a museum. There's a large number of muntjac deer. They're not native, but they just take up the place. And a lot of US airmen probably never would have heard or seen like these screaming before.
Yep.
So, in the pitch black, middle of the night, hearing this maybe freaked them out a lot more than it would have probably the local British folk.
There's also the initial sighting on the 26th of December, so not the 27th, as Halt memo later stated, the importance of which will soon become obvious. So it coincided with the appearance of a fireball seen over southern England. So explain that away.
Yeah, that would... interesting.
Well, astronomers, they've attributed the fireball to space debris entering the atmosphere and burning up, aka a meteor. So on a clear night, which Halt says the night was at the time, a meteor could have very easily been confused for a possible downed aircraft, which Peniston and others admit they assumed the phenomenon was when they first saw it.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, we thought it was a meteor or a downed aircraft. Then we thought it was a UFO. And then other people were like, actually, it probably was a meteor.
Probably was a meteor, yeah.
Yeah. There literally was meteors.
You were right the first time.
Yeah. The lights in the sky that Halt claims to have seen when he left the woods, and he's seen two to the north and one to the south. Well, firstly, it's important to note that both Peniston and Halt's accounts have become more and more convoluted and embellished as the years went by. And essentially, each time a new criticism comes, the story, I just remembered, suddenly evolves an answer for
Just
whatever.
one more thing.
Yeah, exactly. They suddenly remember something else, which explains it all away. What Halt very likely saw, if anything, was merely some extra bright stars. Keith, you're very familiar with extra bright stars, as we know from a couple of episodes ago.
Mine was different.
Again, Holtz admit himself that it could have been light reflecting off a cloud, and the sky was very clear that night. And the laser-like beam of light shining down was another detail he added years after the fact. Halt has said he doesn't know if what he saw was a UFO, and he would love to know what exactly he saw that night, but at the same time he also dismisses any logical suggestions, and instead is like, I don't know what I saw, but it was definitely a UFO. Basically, that's what he's like.
There's a phenomenon called satellite flare or a satellite glint. Have you heard of this?
I have not.
So it's cool. So this is where you might see a brief flash of sunlight off a satellite surface in the night sky, which you might mistake for like UFO or something like that. So these flares, they've possibly been around since the very first shiny satellites in the late 50s. But the famous super bright predictable flares, they started in the 1990s with iridium. Also, like more recently, from 2019, people, they've been describing what they see as these racetrack lights. It's kind of a load of lights in a line shooting across the sky. These are coming from the Starlink, the satellites that Elon Musk has shooted up. So pilots, they say that they see these flares all the time, especially when they're flying east around 1 to 2 hours after sunset or before sunrise. So this is when the angle of the light from the sun is most likely to reflect into your eye.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Peniston is also guilty of changing his story over the years, often in some very obvious and spectacular ways. The top of the pile is, remember that binary message, folks? He claims to have downloaded to his brain upon touching the UFO. Well, the facts around the download are a lot shakier than Peniston would have you believe. For a start, the idea of him somehow forgetting or ignoring the series of numbers for years after the event, a little silly. How could someone just ignore or disregard something so earth-shatteringly significant and monumental in his life and then just be like, I forgot about that for a couple of years, as you do. Then there's the truth about the translation. Now, it seems that whoever the expert employed by this TV show was, let's just say they took a little bit of artistic license with translating this binary. And when I say artistic license, I mean they just invented it all. Completely. The binary message, it doesn't quite translate to English, and it definitely doesn't give them a story of humans from the future that the Peniston and the producers believed it to. The real English interpretation of the binary would be, I could read it out here, but basically it looks like your Wi-Fi password. It's like 520922531N131WCON. Like it looks like your random Wi-Fi password. Yeah. It's just random strings of letters and numbers that mean nothing. Maybe if you squint, they mean something.
You really gotta squint.
Yeah, and the coordinates given, they don't match up to these mythological spots. They're just random numbers that don't give readable locations, but Peniston and producers said they did. That said, there are many interpretations of those numbers. They can really mean anything you want them to mean. Whatever you want them to believe, these numbers can be that. So over the years, the numbers being on separate sheets of paper in the actual notebook has been pointed out as a reason for questioning the authenticity of the notes. Were they really written at the same time, as Jim said, or were they added in later over the years? And then there's the little matter of the show Peniston was being interviewed for. It was Ancient Aliens. That was the show. It's, the meme is all you really need to know. Aliens. That's all you need to know about that.
There's also a Halt's description of, remember the center of the eye, like objects seemingly winking or blinking?
Yeah.
So this has been likened to the rotational frequency of the lighthouse signal light. But he refutes this and he says that there were two separate things. He could see both, so it was definitely something else. Again, though, he only says this after the possible explanation was suggested.
Yeah.
I feel like he was watching Lord of the Rings that night.
He's like the Irish Siren.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Remember me mentioning in passing that Halt, he called on a Sergeant Neville's, a security officer who was on duty, because he wanted Sergeant Neville's to bring a camera. Well, then there's going to be pictures, right? There's going to be photographs, which conveniently all came out either over or underexposed. To top it off, the negatives were then lost. Halt rarely mentioning it in later interviews that none of the pictures were taken were good, and we kind of lost it.
I accidentally burnt all my cameras.
And former base commander Colonel Ted Conrad has strongly refuted both Halt's and Peniston's accounts. He even goes further in his criticism of Halt's claim, going as far as outright condemnation of his allegations of a cover-up. In opposition to a 2010 affidavit by Halt, Conrad gave his own account in which he said, "We had people in a position to validate Halt's narrative, and no one could. We saw nothing that resembled Lieutenant Colonel Halt's description, either in the sky or on the ground."
Later in an interview, Conrad said Halt, he should be ashamed and embarrassed by his allegation that his country and Britain both conspired to deceive their citizens over this issue. He knows better. Conrad also said that to his face when he met with Peniston after the event. Peniston had mentioned nothing of seeing or touching any kind of craft. So that's what he said. Colonel Conrad, he continues to deny anything other than just some odd lights being seen and just a series of hoaxes slowly gathering weight over time, and it just got out of hand.
Mm-hmm. The Rendlesham Forest story is very interesting. We told you, the first half of this episode was telling you about the real story, and then the second half we're kind of like, oh, well, this is
all over it.
Shitting all over it. Here's some of the criticisms, and here's some of the but actually, the actuallys of the story. Who really knows what happened? But there's one final thing to yuck their yums, as we would say, about the Rendlesham Forest incident. And that's the idea of a hoax.
Okay.
But still a weird encounter. And it's pretty funny in a very weird way, because the entire Rendlesham Forest incident might have been a creative prank played by British Special Forces on the American airmen. In August of 1980, and remember Rendlesham Forest happened in December, so a couple of months before, several SAS, Super Army Soldiers, I believe it stands for, several SAS operatives had parachuted into the grounds of Woodbridge, the airbase, in order to test the security of the base in real life, basically a real life operation. Unfortunately for the British Special Forces, they were detected almost immediately and detained by the Americans. To add literal injury to the insult, during the detention, the men were knocked around and basically beaten up by the US airmen who were trying to make sure that the English forces were testing security and not actual secret Russian spies or something. Whatever. Apparently, during this whole testing endeavor, the violence actually got a little bit far, and some of the US airmen kind of beat the British guys up a little bit too much. And so, the SAS, Special Forces guys, they devised a plan to use flares, emergency lights, and black intelligence balloons to trick Americans into thinking aliens might be scanning their base. Basically, they're like, we'll get them back and we'll freak the shit out of them. These claims came from a 2018 letter to UFO researcher Dr. David Clark. The letter claims to be from a former SAS operative who was in on the joke. The writer claims then that the whole thing just got out of hand. The letter definitely offers a potential solid and earthly answer as to what the witnesses actually witnessed in the woods that night, but then the letter itself could have been a joke, having been received and dated around April 1st.
Okay.
So, yeah. According to the SAS prank explanation, the idea came about because of the Americans' tendency to use the word alien to describe anyone on base who wasn't meant to be there, including SAS operators. So they're like, you think we're aliens, we'll give you a real alien. And so, there you go, folks. That is the story of the Rendlesham Forest incident. Did Colonel Halt and Pennison really see an alien in the woods that night? Or, womp womp, was it just a whole lot of nothing? I mean, like most UFOs encounters, you really don't know much. You're kind of leaning on probably nothing happened.
So here's the thing. There's a lot of stuff to kind of discredit it, and we went through like half a page of it, or like half a
multiple pages of it.
But like, we think of ourselves as this like intelligent species, and we're able to create these amazing machines and stuff. But like, have you seen recently in the news, there was a leaked video, and it shows a drone tracking a metallic sphere, like a UFO or a UAP, off the coast of Yemen. So they tried to shoot it down with one of their Hellfire missiles, and it just fucking bounced off that thing.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Oh, it's a mad look. It was.
I'm gonna Google it right now.
Yeah, like it makes it pushes it off course a little bit, but it just keeps on going. And like a Hellfire missile, it's a laser guided rocket that's designed to shred apart basically any vehicle on the planet, and it just bounced right off that sucker.
Okay, I'm watching it right now.
There's like the missile comes in, there it is,
whoa,
and then it just keeps on going.
Wow, that is weird.
It doesn't do anything to it.
Holy shit.
Yeah. But like, there's one thing saying like, oh, it's UFOs, but like the explanation people are trying to make is like, oh, this is just some really advanced technology that we have. If that's true, and we are that technology advanced, why can't we get printers working?
That's the biggest mystery of all, Keith. I think you.
I can never get a printer working.
No, they never worked. They never want to connect.
If we were that superior, we'd have working printers.
I know, and I'm always like, it is fucking full of ink.
I know.
Never worked.
Yeah. You're out of black, and I'll prove it by printing a page of black.
Yeah, exactly. Well, folks, you know what? If you want a real mystery to solve that motherfucker.
Big printer.
All right, folks. Thank you so much for listening to this whole episode of the That Trevor podcast. I hope you enjoyed your time here with me and Keith. And we, hopefully you'll join us again next week.
Yeah.
Or else. All right, folks. Thank you.
I'll see you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. Bye. Bye.